For African Americans, these weren't just words. They were the makeup hiding a very ugly face of the violence underneath, and they were posted across city limits all across the country. And if you didn't obey, then the consequences were very real and often very brutal. Route 66 promised freedom and adventure, but for Black families traveling the Mother Road, the reality was far from free. But to understand the full story, you got to go back a little bit. We can start in the 1800s, specifically with the Compromise of 1877, which was the piece of legislation that pulled federal troops from the South, ending Reconstruction. So Reconstruction was started because the country needed a way to define the nation and try to rebuild the Union. And they also wanted to figure out what the role of these newly freed slaves would be. The Union was restored, but this is what that defined freedom looked like. Segregated entrances, segregated classrooms, segregated lives. Jim Crow laws disenfranchised Black Americans through poll taxes, literacy tests, and intimidation, violence, lynchings, beatings, mobs, enforced racial boundaries far beyond the law. So this system that you saw laid the foundation for what soon became sundown towns, including Oklahoma along the Route 66 corridor that we know now. In 1889, the Oklahoma Land Run opened the territory to settlers, and among them were Black homesteaders and entrepreneurs building the communities that would later sit right off of Route 66. And by the time the highway opened in 1926, segregation may as well have been poured onto the road itself. I mean, just miles off of Route 66, Tulsa's Greenwood District, once called Black Wall Street, stood as a symbol of success and self-sufficiency until 1921, when it was burned to the ground. These sundown towns look like it on paper, but they weren't just names on a map. I mean, this is where people lived. This is where people had homes and had their lives. People like Miss Shirley Nero, right? Shirley grew up in Oklahoma. She built a career as a teacher and a historian. She lived and worked in towns shaped by these Sundown rules, and she says the memories are harder to forget than they are to remember.
A sundown town technically means that it's a town where only white people live in. If you were in town shopping or any other reason that when the sun went down that you had to be out of town. If you weren't, you could have been beat up or escorted out or something like that. That you just didn't get caught in town because you knew something else would probably happen to you that was not going to be good.
So in the early 1900s, sundown towns were no longer just a Southern thing. Through the entire Midwest, from here to California, states were beginning to pick this up, and Oklahoma, with Route 66 running right through the middle of it, was no exception.
The students were very kind. They noticed that I was eating in my classroom at lunchtime by myself. So they decided to join me and eat lunch with me. And then they would start telling me about the town itself. They would tell me what places I needed to go to in the town, where I should stay away from, what places in the town I shouldn't go to. And they would tell me when I should leave. Don't stay here after this certain time. You need to be out of town at a certain place to park. And they tell me, Miss Nero, we'll take care of you. And we'll tell you what you need to do to be safe.
The Chevy Silverado 2500 HD and available advanced towing technology and literally making your own way. Chevy trucks, dependability comes standard. Chevrolet, together let's drive.
Before the mid-1930s, before GPS and interstate maps, survival for Black travelers meant knowing where you could go and where you couldn't.
You would buy something like a bologna sandwich or something like that, and you would meet up with the people, but you couldn't eat it in the store. You would meet in the alley or something like that and eat your little sandwich, and everybody would sit out on the street and make sure you had that done and back home before it was dark. They also had movie theaters that you were allowed to attend on a certain day, certain time. If you went to a restaurant, you had to go to the back door and order your food, and they handed it to you out the back door. So those kinds of things happened.
It was a way of life, quiet rules passed from one generation to the next, a roadmap written in whispers and in warnings. But in 1936, there was one man who decided he'd write it down. It was a Harlem postal worker named Victor Hugo Green who created a guide that would help Black travelers find safety across a segregated America. So the Green Book listed Black-owned businesses, Black-owned restaurants, Black-owned hotels where African Americans could feel welcome, they could feel safe.
And you actually remember it happening in the old days. It's still there in your mind. And you go to these towns, those memories still pop up, and you kind of still looking over your shoulder, thinking about it.
For many others, just like Miss Shirley, just like my grandmother, these weren't just memories that you could leave in the past. I mean, they may look different today, but they never really left.
Some older man came up to us and says, well, what are y'all doing here? Getting out to eat. He says, I hope you don't go in there and try to eat up all the food that's in the restaurant. You should be at home cooking your own food. So, you still get those kinds of comments every now and then from somebody from way back when that still had that mindset that you shouldn't be in my town. So you just kind of brush it off and just go ahead and do what you want to do.
Was that, at that time, was that a daily, was that something that you worried about every day, or did it get to a point where it was just expected?
It was, those kinds of things like that was just something that you knew was going to probably happen.
So even after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, laws had changed, but mindsets had not. So Black travelers still had to be cautious, even in the big cities. Okay, so take Edmond, Oklahoma, for example. The Royce Cafe right here on Route 66 openly refused to serve Black customers. But it wasn't all bad, because for every whites only sign or segregated space, there was also a safe haven. The Threatt Filling Station in Luther, Oklahoma, for example, built in 1915, years before Route 66 was actually commissioned, is a great example of a safe place to just pump gas.
Establishment of the Black towns and the establishment of places like Luther with the filling station was just more of a safe haven, a place for us to be. Where can you go and feel like you were safe? And the filling station was a place where they could go and hang out, or they could get gas, and they have a place to stay at night and feel like they were safe.
In 1915, Allen Threatt, a Black farmer who acquired 160 acres here after the land run, built this filling station. He actually used sandstone that was cut from his own land.
This is the only one. This is the first Black-owned filling station on Highway 66 in America. This place right here was never in the Green Book, never. Didn't necessarily have to be, because it was on Highway 66. Because Black people knew where they could stay at, where they could get gas at, where they could get food at, things of that nature. Grandpa was he was an entrepreneur before people were using the word entrepreneur. That's what he was. The one thing that Grandpa said too is that people who came here, I don't care who they are, I don't care what they look like, I don't care what color skin they have, you treat these people with respect, okay?
Today, the Threatt family still owns this land, and they're working to restore the station into a historic site, which would serve as proof of the perseverance and Black economic excellence that once lived in Luther.
Chevy Trucks. More dependability awards for trucks than any other brand, according to J.D. Power. And Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
So by 1907, when Oklahoma finally became a state, it had more all-Black towns than anywhere in the nation. I mean, take a look at this map. Each of these pins marks a community. At one point, there were more than 50. Today, only 13 of those remain.
Clearview and Bowley is in the Indian Territory part of the state when they were giving out, dividing the land. And the people in this area received their land through allotments to the tribes.
They weren't just towns, they were promises, standing as proof that Black families could thrive on their own soil. Parades, schools, sanctuaries, symbols of ownership, pride, and refuge in a world that too often denied all three. So for Miss Shirley Nero, it's that same spirit of community that still guides her today.
One of the little students, she was going to needed a job, and as the job came around, she didn't have clothes. So I had that little can of money, and I told some of the other two little students, there was a resale shop down the street. And I said, take this money out of this can and go down and buy her some clothes at the resale shop. So just passing on something like that, you can help someone else be something better than what they were.
I started school at Washington High School, which was a segregated school, okay? So I went to school with everybody, from the administration down to Rugrats. We all looked like this, okay? When I came home, I got off the bus right over here, okay? This was always my first stop. My aunt always gave us a popsicle, okay, split it in half. Everybody looked like me, okay? So growing up in that environment, okay, I didn't have one mom, I didn't have one dad. You're always representing your mom, your dad, your elders, grandpa, okay? Because again, grandpa, grandma started the whole thing. So it's just a respect thing. And you just carried that on, and you didn't deviate.
Edward's memories live right here in the bricks, in the gravel, the laughter on a porch. For him, the Threatt Filling Station wasn't just a business, it was a way of life passed down like a family heirloom.
You're doing all of this research, you want to find out about my history and what things were like for my family. Do the same thing for yourself. Talk to your mom and dad, talk to your grandma and grandpa. And don't just talk to them, write it down. Your family history is just as important to you, your siblings, if you have them, as my history is to me, okay?
And Edward's challenge is simple. Remember where you came from, because history isn't just in books, it's in the stories we carry, and it's in the ones that we forget to tell.
If you don't know where you come from, if you don't know who you are, it's almost like you're a part of a tree. If you don't, you're like a leaf on a tree. If you don't know you belong to a tree, well then why be a leaf? So knowing your history will give you some sort of importance. It will give you something that you belong to.
As Route 66 approaches its 100th anniversary in 2026, we'll celebrate the neon lights, the diners, the nostalgia, but it's voices like Miss Shirley, Mr. Threatt, that remind us that it was never just a road. It was the road. One traveled through danger, paved with defiance, and carried by the dignity of those who refuse to be forgotten. When we remember all of it, Route 66 doesn't just tell America's story, doesn't just tell Oklahoma's story, it also tells ours.
We need solid role models in Oklahoma, and particularly in Tulsa, that our children can look up to and be able to say, it is possible for me to grow up one day and be mayor, to be governor, to be senator, and even run for president.
Hate's never defeated. It only hides. We can't. We must not give hate a safe harbor.
Whatever you do, it must be done in the spirit of goodwill and mutual respect and even love. How else can we overcome the past and be worthy of our forebears and face the future with confidence and with hope?